Good morning. I'd like to call the Putnam County Board of County Commissioners Special Budget Workshop to order for Wednesday, June 8th, 2022. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. We will hear from two constitutional officers, supervisor elections, and then the property appraiser. So we'll begin our meeting by the invocation by Larry Harvey, and then the pledge led by Commissioner Turner. Please stand if you're able.
Let us bow. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for today, a day we've never experienced before in our life. Father, as we enter into the business of Putnam County, we have been working on budgets forever, all year long, Father. And we thank you for this time that we can gather with our constitutional officers who are duly elected by the people, your people, Father. And we thank you for them, Father, and we ask that you bless them and keep them. And Lord, as we deliberate today or just be presented, Father, we thank you for what they do for our community and what this board does. Give us wisdom from your throne room. And Father, let us be used by you today as we seek your guidance and your wisdom. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey, and thank you, Commissioner Turner. Before I ask the Honorable Charles Overturf to come forward, I just want to make a couple of comments. Tomorrow, this meeting was advertised for 9, so if we get done early and Tim Parker is here, we could move forward with the next constitutional officer. He did understand that it's 10, so he may not be here. So if he's here, we can move forward. Same thing tomorrow, but tomorrow's meeting starts at 10 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. So it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And Larry, who do we have? Who's first? Clerk of Court?
Right.
Clerk of Court will be first, and then the Sheriff's Office will be second. So same thing. So in this morning, this is a preliminary budget hearing, and we're hearing from the constitutionals. As I said, we will not make any decisions. We can have discussions. So what I'd like is to have Mr. Overturf to come forward and present his budget. And then we can ask a few questions, and then maybe make some comments, and then move forward. So, welcome, Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and commissioners and staff. Before we get started, I just want to personally thank you, Chairman Pickens, for being willing to step up and be a part of our canvassing board. You know, it's a very vital part of the community. Every so often, it's not all the time, but it is in election years, and I just want to say thank you for you to be willing to take on that task, and also want to publicly thank Mr. Hodge for being your alternate, just in case something happens, because we need those alternates sometimes when our schedules get so busy. So just wanted to start out with that and say thank you.
Thank you.
As far as presentation, I'm just going to make 2 or 3 comments. I think you all have copies of what I turned in to Ms. Young the other day. There are some things that influenced me as far as how I came up with the numbers, and I'd like to share those with you. And then if there's somebody that has a question, that will be good. I'll start off at the very top level as far as under personal services, and that is I saw that the governor had issued an order that he wanted to raise the state workers. I've talked with fellow constitutional officers here in Putnam County, and I've even talked to some of you all, and you said that there should be an increase. So I'll tell you, I figured in the 5.38, which is what everybody had told me is going to be common, that you'll see, I guess, this later today and also tomorrow. So that's why there is an increase there. I only have 5 workers besides myself, so you know I'm the smallest of the departments, but the ladies work hard. They do a great job, and so that's why that figure is some different. Coming on down, the other item that has hit pretty hard, and that is retirement. It came from Tallahassee. It's not like you all did it. It's not like I did it. It was something that is sent down, and we have to adjust our numbers to it. I looked at it, and it's about a 20% increase, counting my part and the part of the employees. So when you add those two together, unfortunately, I'm looking at a little bit over $20,000. And I bring that to your attention because the way that it was done last year, and from what I understand, maybe it will be done this year, that each office only gets the percentage of the budget. And since I'm the smallest of the group, my 1.8 doesn't go very far. So while I'm telling you that is just those two items at the top, because of things that are, planned to be done, it goes over the amount that I'm allowed, the way the formula is set up to begin with. As far as other items down, operating expenses, you see my totals. Again, I want to call your attention to 2 or 3 things. One of them is, we all know that the $15 is coming in effect in a couple of years. I only have 5 regular employees, but I have almost 200 election workers that fit this category. And so I have built in some of these numbers, increase to bump them up a little bit. We're not going to the $15 till 2 years from now when the big election occurs. But I figure if we do it in steps, it makes it a little bit easier to adjust to, at least on my end, and hopefully maybe on your end too. So not only do I have the workers that we pay by the hour that we'll have to get up to the 15 during early voting, but then we've also got to figure in on election day and all of our training and stuff to make sure that within, a couple more years that we are at that figure. So that was my reasoning for that part of it. A couple of other things that you all have, or that has been put on us as an office. One of them is 6 years ago when we bought the new equipment and you all were so helpful and we were able to do that. We entered into an agreement with the company. There was a certain amount of fees every year to continue to use their equipment. The first 5 years I had a grant from the state of Florida. They gave us $125,000, so we got $25,000 every year for those 5 years to go toward that cost. When Mr. Leary was the administrator, he and I had talked, and he said, Charles, when it gets over with, it's going to come out of your budget. So I fully understood that, but I want you all to understand now there is no grant money. There wasn't last year, and there's not this year. So that's a between $33,000 and $35,000 extra increase with no grant money or state money to help. So that's one of the areas that I'm having to deal with. And then the other area is the administration had said they wanted to split up the canvassing board attorney from you all as far as, not the same person and also expense-wise. And so I'm in the process now. We've had our first meeting, and I told Mr. Young to send me a bill as we go along so that we can start paying that. But in his estimate, it's going to be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. And again, that's extra. That was not money that I had in the budget to begin with, but it's something that, you all have said that you wanted it done that way. So I'm doing my best to try to do it. I'm just saying that these are all increases. And that doesn't even get down to the area of the extra as far as postage. We redistrict. Our county, all the numbers have changed, so that's 50,000 cards that we've got to send out to you all, and we're getting ready to do that now that we've finally gotten the approval, about our congressional district. So there's things like that. There's paper costs. There's other items that, continually you all are business people, a lot of you. So what we're facing, even in the government side of it. We're having to order stuff March and April to have it ready for November. That's how far in advance that we were told to do it. So we're trying to, to take care of all of the needs as best we can. I'll share with you all that our ballot in August, it appears to be just the regular size, which is good. But our one in November is looking like a 2-page ballot, just like we had 2 years ago. And of course, every time you add a page, that's just that much more expense, whether it's our cost of printing and doing the ballots or sending them in the mail or, those kind of things. So I just wanted all of you to be aware of that. Right now, there is no grant money. I'm not saying the state won't decide to give us some or the federal government, but right now there is nothing that we can plan on to use towards next year's budget as we speak. Like I said, it could change, but right now there's not. So sort of what you see is what I've asked for. I could be off on some of these things. It may be too much, and of course, if it is, then I always give it back to you all. If it's not, then, we'll make cuts or whatever I have to do to try to make ends meet. But I did want to explain the reasoning for that, and I probably talked enough, so.
Okay. All right, before I move the Commissioner, Charles, with the 200 elected workers, that doesn't fall into some type of temporary employee? It still falls into the $15 an hour?
The state's told us to start counting on it, that they're workers, and it doesn't matter if it's temp or if it's, full-time, that they fall into that category. So I'm planning that way. If somebody comes up with a different solution. I was coming in and was talking with Commissioner Rawls, and he asked the question, is it hard to find people? And I said, look, I still have people that will volunteer that think it's free, that they're just doing it because they want to. And of course, I tell them, no, we appreciate you and we will pay you. You know, so not all of them, everybody's not looking for money. It's wanting to be patriotic and try to be helpful. But we feel like, according to the states told us, that they do fall into that category. And so we'll, you know, have another, you know, if we bump it up a little bit this year and then 2 more years, hopefully we'll, you know, be at the amount that we've got to be at. So that's the reasoning and behind the ideas of the numbers and that kind of thing as far as how we came up with it.
Okay, all right, we'll move to Commissioner questions and comments. Commissioner Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Overturf, for being here today. Greatly appreciate it and presenting your budget. Did you base your budget on last year's numbers, or did you base it on Mr. Parker's new projections?
No, I based it on what the percent you all gave me last year and what it was at the final total when I got it from Ms. Young.
Because I think the new numbers from Mr. Parker actually allows more, but that's okay. You came in with a lesser budget and not a more. Am I correct in that? We got an email about that last week.
Yeah, so maybe take just a minute. The concept behind the premise that the board went to of the percent funding was so that in good years, when everyone grows. And so, yeah, so this is kind of our second year, so it's going to be everybody's first year trying to understand what's happening on year 2. So last year, his percent of ad valorem was 1.8, but this year his percent of ad valorem is 2.34, because last year he got additional funding, which means now his new percent. So in all, he didn't reach out to me. We haven't had this conversation, I guess, and everybody's trying to figure it out as we go. But he actually would get an allocation greater than the 55 if we follow the percent funding formula.
So see, great day, isn't it? I mean, seriously, I mean, you know, we kind of knew
Sure.
going into that last year that there would be some
Of
anomalies.
ad valorem revenue.
Okay, hang on a minute.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Larry's still got the floor.
we
We'll answer
kinda
that
knew
question in just a
that-
minute. I'll get to you in a minute, Jeff. Okay.
We kind of knew some anomalies would happen, but it appears that, again, as Ms. Young was saying, as we grow, everybody's going to grow, and it's going to seem some years we probably won't. And there might be times that the board we have obligations too.
Right. Oh,
We
yeah.
have so many employees and we have a lot more. So, you know, but I think all in all, it's a good starting spot.
Right.
And I think that's what I'm so excited about, that, you know, you pretty much know based on growth and all, this is what we're going to be seeing going into the coming years. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, and I think it's good. Let me say this. When I read not read the news, when I watch the news, which I try not to do because I can't go to sleep at night, we don't have the problems in elections in this county that you hear about other places. And I want to give you kudos for that. We don't have those issues here. So transparent here, it's not, I mean, if you can't find the information, you're not looking for it in your office. And I want to say, you know, I feel comfortable even as a candidate and as a commissioner going into any race that we have with the knowledge and the transparency we have in this county. And everyone in this county should feel that your office is doing the best possible job for the people out there. And I want to commend you
for
on
that.
that.
Appreciate
Okay?
it very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all my comments.
Commissioner Turner.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles, for coming today. I do want to start out by saying I appreciate you asking for what you need.
Thank you.
I really do, and not for what you want, because we all want more. But
Right.
This is clearly something that you need. So I'm glad to hear that you did ask for a little less than what you actually could have asked for. I appreciate that, and the fact that, like I said, you asked for what you needed. Next year is a non-election year, and so with the employees, the poll workers that you're going to need, you won't need them next year. So
Right, but remember, this budget starts in October, so the November election is in this budget.
So you've added the money in for the November election this year for poll workers?
Yeah.
And then, okay, good.
Just as best I could,
That's a
you know.
great answer, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just
Yes, sir.
didn't my calendar wasn't working good enough, I guess. So, the other thing is, I noticed that you asked for 9,000 additional in advertising. I don't have an issue with that. I just didn't know what you advertised.
What we're gonna have to do, Terry, is, with the new laws, with what we used to call drop boxes, that we're now told that we have to change the name and everything. Bill's aware of it because he heard me talk about it the other day. We're gonna have to let people know that the nice drop box out in front of my office is not gonna be able to be used. Because I don't have the budget to have somebody paid standing there the whole time watching the box, which is what the new law requires.
So it's
And
basically
even though I've got
voter
it under,
education, but it's under a different thing.
yeah, right. I
okay,
mean, it's,
okay, I
some of
got
these numbers overlap in some ways as far as advertising, but we're gonna, and the other thing is, there are some changes due to redistricting, and we're gonna have to try to get it out to the public. You now vote such and such, whereas you may have voted, these kind of, so anytime we have changes, you gotta try to do the best you can, it's just like you
I
all
get
are
it.
when you make a
Great
decision,
answer.
so.
Yes, sir. And then your repair and maintenance went up $7,000 on the thing, and I was wondering, is that you are looking for additional repairs next year that wouldn't be covered by this year's repair amount?
No, part of that is, again, the extra cost of us having to do the 35,000 as compared to only having to do 6 or 8. So again, those numbers are mixed together in certain areas, just because if I don't spend as much on postage, although we know we're going to, when you start sending out 50,000 pieces of mail just at 50 cents, 53, whatever it is now, and that's just one mailing, type deal. And that's why we've told you all we would wait as long as we could on the redistricting part of it till we were sure, so we only had to do one mailing to try to save as much taxpayers' money as possible, so.
Okay,
Yes,
good
sir.
deal, sounds good. Yeah, and I'm not even gonna try to question postage. So, but thank you, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Rawls?
I'm curious, you don't have an increase in your FICA. Why?
I'm
Your
sorry.
FICA, shouldn't that be 25,000? There's no increase, but you have an increase in payroll.
Yeah, and there probably are some areas that, the last time I think I looked at those numbers, we were right about on it, maybe even a little bit less. So that's why I didn't increase it, as I'm thinking, okay, there's some give and take with some of these numbers, and we can make up for some here as compared to that. To me, it's the bottom line. I just got to make sure that we do all that we do within the budget that we're assigned.
Based on what Ms. Young's saying, you're looking at a 24% increase in your overall budget. So you'll be able to live within that, obviously. 24% over last year, so you'd be around 1.269 million.
No, you're way,
I didn't
That's way too
interpret that
much.
that way, but maybe
You said 1.8 to 2
I mean,
point.
I was told last year we were 1.8 of the budget for the whole county.
Right.
And I don't see that changing. That's why she surprised me a little
No,
bit.
so-
I know the money may be more there, but I figured
no, so the premise that they set up, and I do want to make sure everybody understands the concept so that in the future years, and we can have this conversation before today in future years, but so what happened last year is before we got budget numbers, we took a look at what you were appropriated as a percent of ad valorem revenue. Then when we got new ad valorem, we appropriated you more dollars. So now this year, when we look at what your percent is in terms of what you were appropriated for fiscal year 22 revenue, you got a bigger piece of the pie last year because you were appropriated extra dollars, which means your percent of ad valorem went up. Now yours is insignificant, unfortunately, but it's not insignificant because in this particular case, you start out this year instead of 1.8%, you start out this year at 2.34%. Which gives you about $88,000 or some change in there. And you only, your cutthroat budget is 55. So you would actually get some dollars to have a cushion for FICA or any of those other expenses, repair and maintenance that come up. So your total appropriation, if we follow the formulaic approach, would be $1.1 million. And some change. And so you would have some additional room in there because you're now a bigger percent of ad valorem because everybody grew last year. Right. And the concept, if everybody grows this year, is you'll have a bigger percent next year as well. Okay. So the theory is hopefully we all can share in raising tides, rise all ships. So that's the whole concept.
Okay, so just straight numbers. What's total ad valorem and what's his total percentage of the ad valorem?
net new revenue, or you want total ad valorem?
Total ad valorem.
Is,
New projected revenues,
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
4.9 million.
Net new.
No, it's not
That's-
gonna be either.
That
That's
wouldn't be
net.
total. Are we at 49 million?
Yeah, 4.7,
That's net new?
4.79. No, that's net ad, you asked me for a net.
What is our total ad valorem?
Your total estimated taxable value for ad valorem County BOCC is 5.36 billion.
No, countywide.
That is, BOCC is
No,
countywide.
Total ad valorem, all of it. Are we at 50 million?
Your total is $47.9 million
Okay,
ad valorem revenue.
all right. So, and we're at 2.13 or 2.31
For what?
for SOE?
Your formulaic approach only takes net new revenue and gives him 2.34% of net new revenue.
What is his total of the total ad valorem?
Of fiscal year '22, his total appropriation of fiscal year '22 ad valorem revenue is 2.34, which is an appropriation of his fiscal year '22 budget of 1.023 million.
Okay, so he's 2.3 for the total county revenue.
Yes.
Okay.
Ad valorem revenue,
Right.
yes.
When I say county, I'm talking countywide, not BOCC.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so for clarity, we're at 47.9 million total revenue, and you guys are 2.034? Is that correct?
You're mixing two different fiscal years, and
No,
that's,
I have a logic process. So what is his, you said 1,089,000, is that his new total? 1,189,000, what was that total that you were,
no, sir, 1 million, if we follow the formulaic approach for this fiscal year '23,
right?
his appropriation would be $1,112,107.
Okay, give me just a second here. So he's 2.3% of the total. Right, okay. And last year, roughly, what was he of the total? 1.8 of the total?
Last year, he got it, so that would have been fiscal year '21, he was 1.88%
Okay.
of our total. So fiscal year '22, he got appropriated 2.34%. He was 2.34% in fiscal year '22. So when we move into '23, he would get that piece of the pie of net new ad valorem revenue.
Do you like that approach, Charles?
Good right now.
I mean, no,
Yeah.
so I guess, you know,
If it goes down.
there, I look at numbers a little bit differently than a lot of people do, but I look at numbers a lot. It's what I do for a living. I also run a business. You run a business. You have receivables, you have expenditures that you have to cover. Looking at the next 2 budget years, getting to the $15 an hour minimum wage, knowing that you have certain costs that, even Janet Yelling the other day admitted that the inflation is not transitory.
Right.
So looking at the inflation that we've endured over the past year and a half, facing 2 years now, in applying this logic, which I personally don't agree with, do you see that you get to a point where you can hit a plateau and cruise? Or do your employees start to suffer? do you start to have to, I don't know, I can imagine how stressful it would be having to live under a budget that's being handed you like this. I don't know that I could work under those conditions. So I just wonder, if you could be king for a day, what would this really look like, looking at the next 2 years, trying to get to the $15 an hour minimum wage, knowing that you're going to have further increases? And the state just pushed their minimum to 15, so we know that the FRS system is going to be going up. Right now, the stock market is in decline, but as the stock market declines, we still have to cover all those retirees at the higher rate.
Right.
And nobody could have anticipated 5-6 years ago that we would be rushing to get to the $15 an hour minimum, but we have. So you know that you have adjustments that are going to need to be made over the next 2 budget years to get yourself stable and be able to hold on to your staff and whoever else is going to be working. So my question is, if looking at all that, have you given any consideration yet to that?
Yes, sir, I have to a point, although I will say that her or your good news to me does help us, because now it gives me a little bit more to go toward that number. That's why I did it in stages. I guess some people are just automatically saying, we're going to raise everybody and go ahead and get to the 15 so we don't have to worry about it in 2 years. But again, I thought it would be more prudent to try to do it in stages and say we're going to do part of it this time, and then 2 years from now, make sure that we're at the level right before whenever the 15 comes into law officially. So, you can't, you don't have a crystal ball and can't know. I didn't expect a year and a half ago to see some of these prices and what they're going. We all were talking about gas and how much it is to fill your car up or your truck, and those kind of things. A year and a half ago, we didn't see that, or at least I didn't. So there's always going to be some things that are going to hit you at the moment you least expect it and all. But I feel like, at least with what she just said and all, that it gives me a fighting chance. I'm not going to say I won't come back next year's budget and say, hey guys, the 15 is coming and I've got to have more money because we've got to meet that requirement.
It looks like you got a $33,000 windfall somewhere in there.
Compared to what? Yeah.
So I think you've answered the question. What I'm trying to get everybody to wrap their head around is that the postage that you're paying for today will be more next year because the fuel prices are up. Our electric bills are going up. Do you pay your electric or do we pay yours?
You do.
We do, okay. So our costs are going to go up on that end. We know that. If you break an air conditioner, obviously we pay for that. Those costs are going to go up. But if you break a piece of equipment, have you looked at any equipment costs? Like, Commissioner Turnover just on air conditioners, and we know that
Right.
they're stupid high right now. What is election equipment doing?
Well, and just, Terry's not here today, or not, but he and I have already had the discussion that I honestly believe we are exactly halfway into the lifespan of the equipment that was bought back in 16. I think if we get 10 to 12 years, and we're already at 6 years now, so I've already told him, hey, as you all look down the future, be thinking about it, because there is no savings account like we had 6 years ago when we bought it.
Do we buy that, or do you buy that?
No,
We do.
the county did.
We have to buy the
Yeah,
assets.
and he used Better Place money, and then Mr. Hersey, before Ms. McCool, had saved some money and put it in a savings account. You can't even do that anymore, but it was about 75 that we could use toward that. So when you added all of that together, it worked out to be a good deal for the county. But I've already, as I said, told Terry to be thinking in the next 3-4 years, I'm not, and this is only if the legislature, the governor, somebody higher up doesn't mandate some kind of change, and if they do, then you just have to bite the bullet and do it. But our equipment's in good shape right now, but it just,
So here's a dumb question. What if Better Place didn't exist?
well, then
What if it didn't get
it would have,
Well,
and that's
renewed
what, when Mr. Leary was here as the administrator, he had said that was the way he wanted to do it, and we were fine. I negotiated with the company. We even got it was about $50,000 less than it had been when Ms. McCool had asked him about it, a couple of years before. So I believe we got a really good deal, and we did it, it didn't put a huge amount on the taxpayers as far as that's concerned. I'm just saying, at some point, somebody's going to have to worry about doing that again in 2, 4, 6, 8 years.
And that burden is ours to bear for sure, okay? So you're saying we should start budgeting for that?
Well, at least I've told them to be thinking about it, because you're looking, 6 years ago, it was right at 400,000. So you know it's probably going to be
You say 400?
400 was what we ended up getting it. So that's, I believe it was a pretty good deal for 30 pieces of, or 30 tabulators and stuff for roughly. And so with the 75 we already had and the savings that we negotiated, you know, the Better Place only came up with a couple $100,000 instead of the whole thing. So, but we don't have that going forward. So it's just something for you all and the administration to at least be thinking about. You know, I think we'll be okay for a few more years, but, you know, you just don't know.
That happens fast, and we've still got to get our employees the $15 an hour. So you're confident that 2 budget years from now, if you stay on this course, you meet the $15 an hour minimum requirement and are able to carry the labor burden that goes with it?
I think we will, especially if she keeps giving good news, then that would be very helpful. Now, if we go the other direction and we take a cut, then of course, you know, all bets are off, you know, for any of us, for business or for government. But no, I think at least we're moving in the right direction. You know, again, with only 5 employees, I'm fortunate that even the lowest paid is still above that amount, whereas Public Works and some of the others that you all have to deal with are not even close. So I know there's going to be huge amounts of changes in those people's budgets. But we just want to, as I said, just keep up with what we can do so that the hit's not as big.
Are you afraid of wage scale compression at all?
Not really.
If you have somebody making $17 an hour and then 3 years from now they're at $18 an hour, but everybody's at 15 at the minimum.
Right. Well, and I'm trying to keep that into account, and that's why I said what I did about the ladies that work with us now, giving them an increase so that when that comes, then they are still feeling like, hey, he doesn't.
You have enough. You think you'll have enough gappage? So a report that I read a couple of weeks ago said that it looks like the new poverty rate will actually be around $36,000. If that's the case, then you've got to be at $18 an hour plus or minus,
Right,
to be able to be hitting the sweet spot, so to speak, between $15 and $18 an hour. Are you going to have your folks north of that $18 an hour in 3 years, or are you going to have?
I will my regular employees,
Right.
yes. I've got to work on my clerks and those that I already pay more now. You know, they're at $13 or $14, so they are going to have to be, so, but that's only 20 or 30 or 40 people as compared to the overall 175 to 200. That's the biggest bulk, is the ones that are under the 15 now that I'll have to get to that point. So,
But
you know.
I don't think you answered the question. The question is,
Okay.
thinking about, so 2 years ago, if you were making less than $20,000 a year, you were technically in poverty.
Right,
You and I had a conversation coming in about rental rates. And if Barrington Apartments is getting $1,500 a month for a 2-bedroom, and we just say that's your market rate
Right.
For a 2-bedroom right now, then that dictates you have to have a $60,000 household income. If you have a single wage earner, they're not going to be able to afford that at $15, $16, $17, $18 an hour. They would have to be upwards of $30 an hour to be able to qualify to live in that apartment. So in conversations that I've had recently with some social agencies that are dealing with homelessness, and part of the complaints that we're getting is that landlords are taking the easy way out. They get a huge jump in the cost of their home. They want to sell their home. The new owners are not philanthropic, and they either want to move in or they want to rent it for higher rent, and people are being dislocated. So at the $15, $18 an hour with a single household wage earner, they're not going to be able to afford to live in Putnam County. My question is, are you taking this into consideration looking forward, and can you start budgeting so when we get there in 3 years, you're able to have enough of a gap, especially with the 5 office employees that you have right now, where they're not looking to go to work for Buc-ee's at $22 an hour for food service?
right.
That's the question.
Right. Yeah, definitely that is the strategy to try, as you've already said. So, you know, part of it is wait and see. I mean, you know, because you can plan, but some things come up and sometimes you lose a good employee that, you know, for whatever reason, you know. So I'm doing the best we can right now looking at that idea and trying to go ahead and bump them up enough so that they really got to think about it. You know, he's paying us X amount of dollars. We like the job and that kind of thing, so we're going to stay, you know. But all of that makes sense totally, you know, as far as what you've said.
So
you know,
would it help if you had?
Oh, it'll always help.
I mean, I'm just trying to see if there's a way that we can My biggest concern right now is for the employees that work in Putnam County, for us to be able to hold the line and hold our employees.
Right.
And not give them the reason to go look. So right now, anybody that wants to make $14, $15 an hour can go to work for Racetrack Gas Station. They have a big sign right out front. The ARC over here starts at $15 an hour. There's a sign on a power pole over here. We're starting to see these signs pop up all over the county. So
Jeff, I think one of the advantages I have that it's not like this is life or death to them. Usually they either have other jobs that they do this. It truly is part-time. It's just, a few days every 2 years as far as they're concerned, so that it's not their total livelihood. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Every one of them appreciates what I give them and what they've made and stuff like that because they all love to work. So I think I'm in a little bit of an advantage situation just because it's a different kind of person. But they all know if they get a job somewhere else, I'm going to wish them the best because I totally understand they can make, and I lost a couple. In fact, you mentioned the ARC, and there was one that left 2 years ago because it was a full-time job, and you totally understand that. So I guess we've got, in my little department with the other people, we've got a little advantage that it's a different kind of group of people that's looking for work, and as I said, some of them thought they were doing it for free, so, that it was just their service to do. So, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying and think it's something we all need to look at, and especially some of the other departments probably will affect it more than it will mine, but, we got to get to that level, so it's got to be there somehow.
okay. Good.
Okay. Commissioner Adams?
So just for everyone's perspective, we keep talking about 3 years. It's 4 years and 4 months from today when we have to be to $15 an hour.
Budget years.
So there's a little bit of expansion on that. I mean, there's urgency, but 3 years really pulls it in.
Paul, if you don't mind asking, when is the exact cutoff? 'Cause I think
October
that-
of 2026.
September 30th of
Or,
2026.
Yeah, October 1st, September
Okay,
30th.
and the reason I say it's because probably in 2 years when we're having this discussion, it'll be that budget that
Right,
will
that
affect that.
3 budget
So-
years.
Yeah.
So that's why
Yeah.
I'm trying to think about it a little bit ahead of time.
And I just have a couple questions for Julianne, really. I'm just trying to, the 2.43, so where does that 0.5% come out of? Because you add up to your total split is 100%. So if he's up to 2.43, who's
2.34.
3.4? It's 0.5% more than
You're
what he
okay.
had. So who didn't get the 0.5%? Are you talking about, I just need to understand, are you talking about this year's, because we saw increased revenues, it's 2.34 of last year's number?
No, sir. Let me back up. Maybe I'm not explaining it very well. The way the formula was set up, the concept behind it was to make sure that we can be fair to both sides of the table. Right. And so what happened on year one, we took fiscal year 21, we took what that agency was appropriated and divided it by fiscal year 21 ad valorem revenues. We got a percent of the budget. So for fiscal year 21, you are 1.88% of the ad valorem revenues. When we moved into 22, we gave him, each of the officers, their breakdown, 1.88% more as a number of net new revenue. So he got additional funding for fiscal year 22. So now when we move into fiscal year 23, we erased those numbers. We grew in revenue last year, and he grew in appropriation last year. That means the percent of his budget as appropriated by ad valorem revenue grew. He's now 2.34% of ad valorem revenue. So as we move into fiscal year 23 budgeting process, when we get net new revenue, he's 2.34. Every single one of the constitutionals grew last year. So everyone goes into fiscal year 23 with a higher piece of the pie because your overall pot grew. So when your pizza got bigger, his piece of the pie got bigger. So when he comes back to the table next year, he gets to start out a bigger piece of the pie. Am I making more sense?
I understand how everyone can grow and we still only have 100% of revenue.
Go ahead.
Or are you basing on last year's numbers? That's the question. Is it
No,
2.3?
this
But
year's,
to answer your question, it's coming out of new money, so it's not coming from somebody else. Nobody else is taking a hit.
He has a base of 1.8.
no, he has a base going into 23 of 2.34. That's his base.
But the total pie is 100%, so somewhere, someone's losing 0.5%.
No, sir. It's, right, it's new money. He's only getting 2.34% of net new revenue. Nobody lost any money. No one.
So he's at 1.88 of regular, what equal last year, and 2.34 of net new.
No, that's not right.
I don't get it. I absolutely don't. I don't,
So,
I'm not
And
doing
it
this
may
to-
help for you and I to sit down and do the math together. That may be
Yeah,
easier.
we can do that.
But no, sir.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
ask this question, just, so my figure that you have in front of you going into this year that you all approved from last year, and you did add extra money for a little bit of raise and stuff, so you gave it to me as $1,023,000.
That's correct. That was
And-
your fiscal year 22 appropriation.
Exactly. And so you see where I came in with this year's, which is, I had said was more than the 1.8. So are you telling us, and maybe that's what he's asking, that really I started at 1.8 still, but as Rich just said, you're getting that half of a point up to the 2.34, or you're starting with the 2.34?
You started at 2.34 because when fiscal year 21, you were at 1.8%.
Right.
Then we gave you dollars. So now when you move into fiscal year 22 numbers, when we look at, we got new ad valorem dollars and we gave you new appropriation dollars. When we look at this, you now are 2.34% because you grew. You grew by 1.88% of net new revenue, which brought you up here. So now this year you start out of net new revenue taking 2.34%.
Okay, then I guess my only question would be, is there a way that you could let us, or at least me, know as I'm working on the budget? Because you surprised me, which was a nice surprise, but is there a way that we
So I
can be
wish
notified to, you know?
Unfortunately, I don't get y'all have to turn in your budgets by June 1st, and I don't get the preliminary numbers from the property appraiser until June 1st. This year, I didn't get them until late in the afternoon. So y'all had already done your budgets and submitted them before I had any idea of what kind of revenue I was dealing with to give anybody any information. We certainly can get together after June 1st so that you know this will be a tentative budget submitted, and then you'll know what your actual appropriation would be according to the formulaic approach. So certainly we can share all that information after the fact, but I can't generate that formula or those numbers until I have the preliminary numbers from the property appraiser.
Okay, if you could do that at some point, especially 2 years from now, answering Jeff's question.
Sure.
Because if I know ahead of time, then I can say, man, Commissioner, I don't have that much of worry, because we already are gonna get this
Sure.
increase, and that'll go to raising their salary, you know, that kind of thing. It just, peace of mind that I know we can make what we need to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul?
I'm confused, but I guess I'm all right for now.
Commissioner Turner?
Thank you. Again, I appreciate you asking for what you need, Charles, instead of just trying to fluff your budget. I appreciate that a lot. This board voted to give everybody in the county a raise to $13 minimum an hour, plus the 5.38, or 5.38%. So I appreciate you. I don't think that affects you as much, because most of your ladies already make that amount, so they're just gonna get the 5.38. It's not like you're paying them $9 or $10 an hour now.
Correct.
So
Right.
it's not as different. And you're right, our budget doesn't work like it did years ago. A public budget isn't like in my business. If I needed a new truck, I might start saving money for it this year to pay for next year. That's not the way that's why we have reserves in this.
Right.
Instead of a savings account, we have reserves to cover those expenses that are coming. It's nice to know they're on the way, where we don't over budget and don't have reserves to pay for them. But as far as that equipment you're gonna need in the future or whatever, we'll just have to know it's coming and figure out how to pay for it at that time.
Yes, sir.
And I think that your budget is a lot different than most of the other constitutionals, that your election year budget is higher than a non-election year budget is, and so.
And in fairness, you've been here several years, and Larry's been here a long time. And I think it's fair to say, every time I have done that, you were surprised when I reduced it, when it wasn't, we didn't need as much, and then I would come back and say, hey, we got an election, I do need it. So I've tried to be as fair with you all
I
as
know
possible
you
in
have.
the county.
That's why I've said twice now, I appreciate you asking
Right.
for what you need instead of what you wish for. I really do appreciate that more than you'll ever recognize. So, but anyhow, I just wanted to bring that up too. This is an election year this year, and we'll carry on a little bit of it into next year, but as far as next calendar year goes, it's not an election
Right, not
year,
in-
so it
not
shouldn't
in
be as bad.
2023.
So that
Right.
probably helped a little bit in what you needed this year as far as over if next year was an election year too.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Rawls, and we'll wrap it up.
So the total annual revenue to the county right now is anticipated being 47.9 million. 2.34% of that is 1.2 million.
That's not the way the formula works.
I'm just telling you the way the numbers work. So,
So you gonna make up your own formula?
no, I'm not, no, I'm doing simple math, not Boolean algebraic equation here. So, the numbers don't lie. At 2.34% times 47.9 million gives you 1.2 million, which is about where we're discussing your budget is, somewhere plus or minus $15,000. So I don't want to try to wrap my head around, the net increase of last year's total and all that. I think that just really clouds the water. So by the numbers, based on what we're being told from staff, you're getting 2.34% of the total revenue from the county's anticipated revenue from the county. And obviously that number can go up or down year over year, depending what the economy does. I really think that we should be thinking about setting aside money over the next, you're recommending 4 years to replace that equipment. So I think we should be cognizant of that.
I don't think we can. I don't think you can have a government savings account. That's what reserves are called.
What if we don't have reserves?
I understand.
If we know that we're looking to replace equipment in 4 years, you're saying that we can't budget for that?
No, when we got here 6 years ago, the reserves were, what, half of what we had, if that, at
I don't know.
best.
What are
So
reserves today?
we've been able to build those reserves in
have a
not the
number.
greatest of
Can you look it up
times,
real
so.
quick?
No, I gave it in the last budget report. I can pull the minutes from the last budget report when we were here.
So,
12 point something million, I think that's.
Have we spent much beyond that?
Sure you have.
that's really a conversation
Well,
for another day.
Anyways, I think from a simplicity perspective, you just need to plug in 2.34%. That's what you're getting the total.
I suggest you sit down with Julianne,
Yeah,
and I'm gonna sit down with her, because I've gotten confused. I've
Right.
pretty much had my head wrapped around it, but I'm getting a little confused with this conversation, so.
Well, I can see what your question is, but I hear her response. So is it really that the
He's
difference
taking-
from 1.8 of mine to the 2.3 is only on new money, so to speak, or on evaluations that have increased?
All right,
If
let me,
not, I understand what he's saying, that.
I'm gonna try one more
Well, I
time.
think-
Let me try it again, one more time.
One more time, and then I think in the essence of us moving forward, and this is just
Imagine if
our
we had to
first,
explain this to the public.
but I understand that, is to sit down with Julianne, but Julianne, you give it one more shot.
All right, one more try. If governmental accounting forgets last year and it forgets next year, right? So it only looks at a year. So when the formula was derived and agreed to, the application was take your prior year appropriation and divide it by prior year ad valorem revenue. So prior year this year, well, let's start with where your numbers are. Prior year, when we went to fiscal year 20, was the first year we did this, which was this year.
122.
Your 21 appropriation divided by 21 revenue was 1.88%. You were 1.88% of the budget in fiscal year 21. So when we had new ad valorem revenue, we took the net new ad valorem revenue and gave you 1.88% new dollars plus your fiscal year 21 appropriation. Now, here we are in 22. Forget all of that. The way the formula works, your fiscal year 22 appropriated dollars divided by fiscal year 22 ad valorem revenue, you're 2.34%. When we look at fiscal year 23 proposed net new ad valorem, you will get 2.34% of net new revenue. That is an additional $188. We'll take your fiscal year 22 appropriation, we'll add your percent of net new revenue to that, and you'll have a fiscal year 23 appropriation that will grow by 188.
And that's where you come up with a 1.112 figure, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
That simplify a little bit, maybe?
Take your 1.112, divide it into 40, divide it by 47 million, and you get 2.34. There's your number. It's of the total, total revenue. That's the easy way to do it.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Turner.
I have one other, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Commissioner Turner,
The,
And then
the only
Paul
thing
will
that I
wrap it up.
wanted to do is reiterate that the government's budget does not work like my private budget in my business. We have reserves, we don't have savings accounts. Any money that's left that you haven't spent, you actually have to roll over if you have a project going that money is allocated for. So you don't just start saving money now for perceived expenses down the road. You budget for them when the time comes, and that's what reserves are for, if they're unanticipated expenses. I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Adamsack.
Charles, just as we lead into these future years, because you're talking about 3 years or 6 years possibly replacing those machines.
Yeah,
Could we
that's
maybe
just
get
a-
an update on what the machines costs periodically, maybe every
Sure.
2 years?
Yeah.
Just to see what the increase is, so we kind of know what we're marching towards.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
right now, we're completely blind, it seems like a little bit.
And the only reason I did that with Terry was I just wanted to say, hey, keep in the back of your mind, because I know they have to really work on the budget and the numbers, and just sort of like the sheriff will do, or anybody else, yeah, okay, we've got this huge expense coming up.
So
How-
it was 600,000 last time?
No, we got it for 400, right at
Okay.
400,000, but then, like I said, the county didn't have to pay because we had 75 already sitting in a savings account that was done from 20 years or 15 years earlier, so, and that's not there, of course. So it will come out of somewhere
Just
at
so maybe
some
we can
point,
get
but I'm
that every-
hoping it's a few more years past that, but it might not be, and then with the sentiment in the country of the type of equipment and the makers and stuff like that, you know, you never know when somebody's gonna say, we want you to outlaw this particular type, and you gotta go buy something new.
And it's a pretty specialized market, so it's not like you
Oh,
got
yeah, yeah,
thousands
there's
of
only
companies.
3 companies in the whole country.
Yeah.
3?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, if we
And
could
in the
just have
state of
that
Florida
maybe
right
next
now,
year,
there's
that'd
only
be cool.
2 that are certified, but the third one is trying to come in to take the market away from the one that's made the publicity. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you, Charles.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, okay? I want to open up for public comment on agenda items. I missed that one, so anybody want to make public comment on agenda items? Okay, seeing none. We're going to take a 5-minute recess before we have Tim Parker up. Go ahead and reconvene our budget meeting and welcome the Honorable Tim Parker and his staff. So Tim, welcome.
Thank you. I want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share with you some of our challenges, successes, and goals for this upcoming year. As we discussed last budget cycle, legislative action that will affect us in 2022 through the Senate and House tax packages, a provision to increase the property tax discount from 50% to 100% for certain multifamily affordable housing projects currently set forth in Section 196.1978 Florida statutes. Those provisions will remove approximately $5.2 million in assessed value from our tax roll. Despite this action, our taxable value most recently reported is up 9.54%. Future impacts to our tax roll for 2023 include an increase in the widower's disability blind exemption from $500 to $5,000, with an impact of approximately $11.8 million. And if passed as Amendment 3 on the ballot, an additional homestead exemption for non-school levies of up to $50,000 on the value between $100,000 and $150,000 of assessed value of homestead property owned by classroom teachers, law enforcement officers, correctional officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, child welfare service professionals, active duty members of the U.S. Armed Forces, and Florida National Guard members will impact the budget. We don't have a fiscal impact to Putnam County, on that particular amendment if it passes, and of course it needs a 60% vote or better to pass. As you may recall from prior year's discussions, property appraisers' budgets across the state of Florida are approved by the Property Tax Oversight section of the State of Florida Department of Revenue. Property appraisers can make requests for increases to their budgets to DOR and provide documentation attempting to justify the request. However, it is up to the Department of Revenue to ensure that we have the necessary resources to carry out our constitutional responsibilities. This independent agency serves in an oversight capacity between the property appraiser, the county, and the legislature, making sure all aspects of the ad valorem process are as equitable as possible. We have maintained our same staffing levels for the past 8 years. Requiring our supervisors to live in Putnam County creates a challenge to hiring qualified applicants. I love living in Putnam County. However, there is an abundance of information and or misinformation in the media regarding Putnam County, which causes concerns for potential employees and residents. We have had to become more competitive to hire and retain qualified employees. Based on the latest report I have available, our office continues to be in the top 10% most efficient property appraisers' offices in the state on a budget per parcel level as compiled by the State of Florida Department of Revenue. Our office received an appropriation from the state of Florida in over $200,000 for aerial photography that will take place this January. So we do not have to have that as part of our budget. Our office is audited each year by the Department of Revenue for compliance with Florida statutes, as well as by an independent auditor to ensure compliance with generally accepted accounting policies and procedures. We have passed most of these audits successfully in years past and will continue to do so in the future. Again, this is due to the high quality level of personnel employed by the office. Most recently, we received a 100% accuracy level on our dequalification study with the Department of Revenue. Dequalification is the starting point for information utilized by our office to determine what represents market arm's length transactions. Our office continues to assist the county with their solid waste assessments, making those observations during our 5-year inspection cycle. We have successfully migrated to a cloud-based GIS system that allows parcel splits and combinations to be depicted the next day in GIS. This assists the Planning and Development Department with their permitting process. The only time that we can give across the board increases to our staffs is when the county does, or the state does, or we do a salary survey. Our intent is to follow the state of Florida guidelines regarding increases. We have several vacancies in key positions. The Department of Revenue has made some suggestions to help fill those and retain current staff. As the BOCC knows firsthand, hiring and retaining employees is one of your and our greatest challenges. As we approach the end of our fiscal year, we typically have excess funds. These funds that were budgeted for but were not expended. Last year, we returned a little over $242,000, and we did not ask for any of that back either, in this fiscal year, in excess fees. For example, we incurred less legal fees than we thought we would. We had incurred less travel expenses as well, and we also had the vacancies that we're not having to fund. These funds cannot be spent. These excess funds cannot be spent indiscriminately. I cannot give bonuses or raises with these funds. How we spend them, if we spend them at all, is overseen by the Department of Revenue. Thank you for taking the time to listen and for your leadership in our county. Certainly we have our challenges, and I will always strive to budget in the most responsible manner to comply with my constitutional responsibilities. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Parker. So Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling upon me. Mr. Parker, I want to say to you, I think your staff and you do an excellent job for Putnam County. I have nothing but the highest respect for you and your staff. When I do call upon your staff, they're quick to answer and they have the right answers. And it's seen by the people in our public that need your services. I hear nothing but good from your office. Your budget, though, you've already submitted that budget, correct, to the Department of Revenue.
We're required
So
to.
they pretty much approve your budget outside of, because they even came back last year and said there was an increase that needed to happen and that took place, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Well, and, let me digress for just a moment. The initial budget we sent up there, they did not approve.
Right.
Okay, so they made some adjustment to that and then sent it back to us with those recommendations, yes.
Okay. I was in a meeting last week, and I know you're the property appraiser and not the tax collector, but it kind of disturbed me a little bit. I was at the regional council in Jacksonville, where I currently serve as the president of that, and the mayor of the city of Palm Coast was there, and it's recorded. You can see it, but his concern was that the ad valorem taxes, they're basically a residential community. So we hear in our community we need more residents, we need more higher value homes. He says that they're going to go broke based on their residential property values. They're not going to be able to take care of the services because they don't have industry supporting the residential homes. And sometimes in the public we hear we need more residents, we need more higher home values, but that's really not true in this case. And I was I had a chance to talk to him, and they're actually trying to move Palm Coast a little west to create some industrial zoning to attract some type of businesses in to kind of help offset that. The reason I ask you that, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I'm not lecturing by no means, but I thank God for our businesses here in Putnam County that we have. I don't know what we would do without those businesses in Putnam County. So, when people say, well, you don't have the interstates that Lake City has, no, but we have Georgia Pacific, and we have Seminole, and we have companies here, Camarco Products. We have companies here that contribute to our tax base based on that, because with the reduction that people keep voting in and the legislators keep putting on, I don't see how ad valorem taxes are going to sustain our budgetary cycles going further and further, because we're throwing people out of the pot constantly or reducing their commitment. And it's going to be very difficult going in the next, 8 to 10 years or something like that. So I don't expect you to, I just wanted to say that didn't know if you've seen that around from other property appraisers, so.
There's probably an ideal mix between residential, commercial type properties. I've asked over the years for what is the break-even point for residential construction that actually contributes to the ad valorem tax base, because you have to provide services, roads, those type of items to those. And I've asked DEO, I've asked North Florida Planning Council, and no one really has been able to give me an answer. But I think for the most part, they agree it's north of $250,000. So whenever you put a residence, whenever a mobile home comes into Putnam County that is less than that, you're really going backwards. And in addition to the commercial aspect of it, what is a little bit scary on our part is that our top 10 taxpayers make up 39.6% of our tax base. Now, we have a very good rapport with most of those taxpayers, and we are in lawsuit with one of them currently, that we've been in lawsuits with in the past. And it's not so much the company as it is, I mean, ultimately it is their responsibility to decide, whether or not their valuation is representative of market, but they hire or they're convinced by a lot of these tax reps that come to the company and convince them that they can save them money down the road. So, we have to prove our case, and we have the expertise to do that, and we can defend it, so.
Thank you. But I guess my point was more that, we are diversified in this county versus some other counties. And when you hear Palm Coast and you think of the housing over $250,000 per home, and the mayor is complaining that they're not going to be able to maintain their city based on ad valorem taxes. We have a diversity here, and it's well done. So I appreciate the work. And also what you were just saying about, I served on the Value Adjustment Board, and truly you do the valuations correctly. These companies do look at finding people to try to save them money, but for the most part, when I've served there, it's always been the correct valuation. So, I understand that process. Thank you, Mr. Parker.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Adamsack?
I guess, Julianne, do we have the same breakdown we had for Charles? The
Yes, sir, we
percent,
do.
What it was last year, what it is this time, and then the total?
I don't have his last year, but this year he should receive 4.84% of new net revenue, which would be $182,407. His request is actually $284,930, which leaves overage of $102,523.
So on the back sheet here, you got 3 proposed new positions. I'm just curious what those are. Are those mandated by the state to you? Is how did that come about, given that you're having an issue hiring some of the already positions you have? Just curious how that.
You talking about that first line?
Yeah, the first line.
Mm-hmm. So, we've had a residential manager position that is really the supervisor of all the field staff, vacant for, I think it's 462 days now. And that has been a shift of responsibilities to other staff members. We're able to do it. We're not able to do our job as well as what we would like, but we are getting it done with excess hours that those individuals have to spend. And they don't get paid overtime, okay, to pick up the slack on that. So when we were talking with the state, their solution was not an increase in the salaries for those type individuals who are picking up the slack. Their solution was to take some of the responsibilities off of those positions and to divide them up into these 3 positions that we're requesting. So that was their solution, and so we're going to attempt to do that.
Do you feel like you'll be able to hire those new positions? Is it, if you can't hire the one, how are you going to find employees for the other 3, I guess?
Yeah, so
Or
I
is
think,
that a lesser, because you're splitting up the duties, is it a lesser position, kind of? Because they have less responsibility?
correct.
So are we getting rid of the one that you've been trying to fill that you can't and doing the 3 new ones, or?
No.
Okay. So you're still trying to fill that one that's been open for 462?
Yes, and we have a commercial manager that was just recently vacated, another key position for our office. The individual that we had in that office was commuting from Marion County 4 days a week. He worked 4 10-hour days, and a position with the Marion County Property Appraiser's Office came open, and certainly he was a very good employee and gave him a good recommendation, and he was hired by Marion County. And so that's my philosophy, and I'm going to train my employees to be the best employees that they possibly can be. And when an opportunity comes that is better for them, better for their family, better for them fiscally, they're prepared. I've prepared them to move on to a better, position. So, and so we can compete, in some areas. Putnam County is beautiful, but there's counties around us that are very attractive. And to ad valorem, the ad valorem industry or the profession is a very specialized profession. So we've had to kind of step outside the box recently, and we're going to, we've had conversations with Santa Fe College, their paralegal program, and they do train people in certain aspects of deed preparation and title examination, that sort of thing, and we can potentially capitalize on that expertise that they have in their paralegal program. So we're having conversations with them. We've recently had conversations with the University of Florida School of Real Estate, and none of their, I think it was the last 34 individuals that they placed out of the University of Florida School of Real Estate, none of them went into ad valorem professions. Okay, so the state of Florida Real Estate Appraisal Board does not currently allow individuals who are seeking to become state certified general appraisers or state certified residential appraisers. They currently don't allow them to gain the experience in a property appraiser's office and be supervised by them. So I'm a state certified general appraiser, and I could supervise those trainees. And it takes about 1.5 years to go through that training process. So we are having a group of individuals from across the state of Florida, and it's being coordinated by Mike Twitty, the Pinellas County property appraiser, who is a MAI appraiser and a state certified general appraiser and a University of Florida graduate. And so we're going to try to make a united front to approach the Florida Real Estate Appraisal Board to say, we should be able to train individuals within a property appraiser's office. You've got to produce certain reports. Those reports have to be reviewed, and there's an extensive examination process that they have to go through. So if they can't pass it, through experience and knowledge gained from our office, then okay, they're not really ready to become a state certified appraiser. But a lot of the private appraisal companies don't like taking on trainees because they can't justify paying them what they would pay them if they were certified. So we might get them for 2-3 years, and then they might move on. But we'll have them for that period of time. And if you get the right person who has a public servant heart, then I think that we could keep them here. So that's kind of a part of what our industry is going through right now.
So you said something about your employees have to live here. Is that what you were saying?
So our supervisory employees are required to live here right now. So we are looking at that, and I remember being on the campaign trail and talking with some candidates, and they were saying, we need more jobs in Putnam County. I was like, we have 1,000 good paying jobs in Putnam County that people don't live in Putnam County. Right. And it's always been one of my, kind of pet peeves. These supervisory positions are well paid, and you lose the revenue, right, when they don't live here and buy their groceries here and, spend their money on entertainment here. But you lose more than that. You're losing an intellectual base. You're losing a community service base, because they're not going to coach a Babe Ruth team and live here. They're not going to go to elementary school and read to kids if they don't live here. Okay, so that's why we're looking at that policy, and unfortunately, maybe in a short-term time period, may have to change that. My goal would be that if we did have to hire somebody and we didn't require them to live here, right? Currently, it's a 6-month period that you have to relocate here. But my hope is that they would fall in love with Putnam County and then decide to locate here. So we'll see how that goes.
How many openings do you have that are unfilled?
So we have a commercial manager, we have a residential manager, and we have a field appraiser in the tangible department, and we have a front counter person
So they're across the spectrum of the titles.
across the spectrum, yes.
Because when we looked at some of you don't seem to have the turnover that some of the other areas in the county have. And I think it's because you're a smaller office, things like that, so you guys can do a lot more there. I guess that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Roll?
I've been screaming for a long time that ad valorem is not the way to go. It's not the way of the future. You and I have had lots of conversation on this. We've had it as a commission. I'm in favor of looking at alternative revenue sources, non-ad valorem based. The good news is the $250,000 that used to be a viable number, that's no longer viable for the services that you referred to, is a reality in Putnam County because our starter houses are now selling in that price range. So, but that's bad because it moves the goalpost from where you need to be. St. Johns County right now is pushing the $600,000 median home sale price level. That's good for us. But what's bad for us is that it's pushing their folks towards us. We don't have any housing inventory. We don't have any apartment inventory. And the folks that would work for you don't have any place to land, and they don't have 6 to 9 months to build a house because right now getting components to build anything is taking a long time. So, everything is compounded and exacerbated. But I think at the end of the day, we have a housing inventory that we can work with. We just need to start talking about different streams of revenue and looking at harnessing that. Last time I checked with you guys, we were just north of 16,500 plus or minus mobile homes, and in the 13,000 something on the site built countywide. I think that's part of the problem is that we have too much of that. Too many mobile homes, too many houses that are undervalued to be able to sustain the workforce that we need. We're struggling to maintain firefighters and paramedics. They're burning out. We don't have a chance of keeping them here. I don't know what the sheriff's deputy turnover rate is. I don't think it's as high as it used to be, but we do have that issue. So is your workload it should be going down according to the U.S. Census. You should have less to worry about since we lost 1,000 people in the county. I'm being facetious.
Yeah, well, for example, down in Willaca, Willaca Village,
Yep.
You've got a bunch of new construction down there. And it's, perhaps we have lost some, individuals as far as census goes, but we do have a lot more new construction this year than we have had in previous years. So we've got that to contend with. We've
And I
got
got more
some
coming
very
for you.
big projects,
Yep.
We'll be putting Seminole Electric on next year. And that's a huge project that we'll be gearing up for here shortly. But we're down our commercial manager, so that would be the person that in the past has been the key lead on that. So we'll get it done, and it'll be done correctly.
When I say I'm being facetious, I know what's coming. I know what's here and what's in process. So your workload is not getting smaller.
No, it's not getting any lighter.
And so I don't know how that works in totality with regarding being short-staffed. I can't imagine it works well for you. And I don't know if you have a burnout in your field of work. If people just come in one day and say, look, I'm going to go work over here, it's a lot easier, and you guys are killing me.
Well, I think that's what we're seeing when people come in and they look at our job descriptions and they look at the fact that we're so not uniform. When a lot of these communities, Palm Coast, St. Johns County, you go in there, you got a subdivision, and there might be 2-3 models in that subdivision, and so you can just put them on very, very quickly, and you've got your jobs done. Putnam County,
Custom.
I mean, up until recently with the folks like A&M Homes, that's not the norm for Putnam County. Down in Willaca Village, those are slight differences in some of those homes, but for the most part, cookie cutter. But that's not the norm for Putnam County. And when we have to inspect all our homes on a 5-year cycle by Florida statute. And so some counties have resorted to aerial inspections, but Putnam County has too many things that are on the ground that, you know, and there's
trees.
certain thresholds of permits, you know, that don't have to be pulled for certain things. And we're very detailed, and we want to pick up everything that we can, whether it's a shed or concrete or whatever it might be. We want to be thorough and accurate in those assessments.
So, housing costs are going up right now. That's good for us. If housing costs stabilize, our cost of doing business will not stabilize. It will continue to go up. Has anyone in the property appraiser world or in the government world that you dabble in discussed any sort of incentives or inducements to be able to give them to employees to get them to move and locate, where they sign an agreement for 5 or 7 years to work here and they get down payment assistance or some sort of housing incentive? Have y'all explored that option at all?
When a few years ago in the South Historic District within the city of Palacios, if you worked within that tax increment district, there was I think a $10,000 grant that was available to you to locate within that district. And I'm not aware of anybody that actually took advantage of that. So as far as my counterparts, we haven't really discussed that as far as you know, incentives to get somebody to come there. You know, when I put forth our budget request to the state last year and they turned down it at a certain level, I mentioned the challenges that we have here in Putnam County. But I also mentioned the fact that there's some things that we know you can't measure. You can't measure how friendly people are. You can't really measure the beauty of Putnam County. So those things don't get reported in a metric, though. You know, what gets reported is you're 66 out of 67 on the health, you know,
Scale.
metric. So,
Yeah.
You know, poverty gets reported, crime gets reported, and we fall short in some of those areas, unfortunately. Do I feel at risk? You know, do I feel unhealthy? You know, we've got some of the best resources that you could have to become healthy, you know, but I go to these food distribution events. I go to one in Interlaken, I go to one in Palaca, I go to one in Crescent City, and we're there to help people try to save some money on their property taxes. And a lot of times the people are just kind of surprised that we're there to help them do that. But at the end of the day, we've saved those individuals over $35,000 because they didn't know about a senior exemption. They didn't know about a widower's exemption. Some of them didn't even have homestead, you know, so we're trying to get them, inform them, think a little bit outside the box, you know, to help our people in Putnam County.
So you're requesting about 5% of the total ad valorem revenue. And I'll ask you the same question as I was asking Mr. Overturf. Going forward, looking at the next 3 years, looking at the wage compression, but also taking a look at cost of housing, cost of vehicles and fuel and all that, do you think that you'll be able to be competitive or get yourself in a competitive position to be able to maintain and retain employees?
You know, that's a tough question. I mean, we would like to think that we create a good enough work environment that if we can find somebody who's kind of grown up here and find a local person and that, you know, maybe has the ability to locate you know, another dwelling on maybe their parents' 10, 15 acres, you know, within, you know, P&D guidelines, you know, for you know, to reduce their housing costs in something of that area, maybe.
That's a lot of.
That's a big maybe. So.
Golly. So what do you do to prepare for the future, to prepare to be staffed and not lose? I mean, training people is expensive. The human capital is just, forget human capital, the dollar cost is expensive. And we have to bear the brunt of it as consumers, the taxpayers do. The property appraiser's office needs to fire on all 8 cylinders in order for us to be able to get the appropriate revenue that we need to manage the county. the tax collector's office has to be able to get that money brought in. At the same time, the BOCC has to be able to take that money and service the constituents that we're asking to pay for this. So there's got to be that balance, and at some point, I feel like, based on what I see on the horizon, and I have a very short view of it, you probably know a lot more of what's coming to the county than I do, your workload is going to increase. And one of two things is going to happen. You're going to satisfy the new home owners, and you're going to neglect the current homeowners that may have increases in their homes where you go in every 5 years and reassess them. And that means we're going to have a shortfall in revenue, which is a disservice to the taxpayers because they need their roads maintained, they need their ditches repaired, they need, and it all starts with you guys. And I would not want to be in your position. I'm telling you, you probably have the toughest job in the county, being able to juggle all the balls that you have to, because everything that we do is 100% dependent on you guys getting it right. I mean, you can't go back in a year, obviously.
And we have employees that commute from Fort White.
That what?
From Fort White, we have one of our field staff that commutes from Fort White.
Is that sustainable?
So when my philosophy is just because you've been here for 30 years, should you be making more than the guy right beside you that does the same job, does it as well as you? No, in my opinion, no. If you're doing the same work, then you should be getting paid the same pay. But you've got to prove to me that you're at that level too. And so where we bring them in fairly low, in that $15 an hour range, we can, accelerate them after they've shown themselves, proved themselves, in their position, but right now we have a vacant tangible personal property field appraiser position open, and it was advertised for 2 weeks. And unless we've got some additional resumes in, we got one applicant open for 2 weeks in a job that starts around $15 an hour.
And that's a critical component because tangible property taxes brings in a lot of revenue.
Well, yeah, I mean, and
Get it
right
right.
now we have, I forget what percentage of our actual tax base that is, but when you look at our percentage of tangible revenue, okay, and you compare that to other counties around us, and we have 4 people in that department budgeted for that, it's a strain. And not only does Justin wear that hat, the tangible hat, he also wears the IT hat. He also has to wear a hat that keeps our CAMA system, our computer system mass appraisal system, up to date and functioning. And then we have interfaces like the permit application between us and the county that he has to work on. And, right now, just to be honest, that's a mess. And we're having to try to figure out, the best way to get that information, because if we can't pick up new construction and find it and make sure that we're accounting for it, then we miss it. I mean, that's unacceptable,
So just so you'll know, at $15 an hour, single wage earner will qualify for $728 a month in rent or in mortgage using a 28% multiplying factor.
Mm-hmm.
That's principal, interest, tax, and insurance. You can't even rent an efficiency apartment in Putnam County for that.
Yeah.
So I think that exemplifies what our problem is. And the question is, how do you budget to get yourself when in 3 years you're going to have this $15 an hour person? If you bump them up 5% per year, they're going to go up 15%. They'll be at $17.25 an hour.
We have
and
them budgeted in the closer to the $20 an hour range, after they've shown that they are competent and they are, productive.
Are they driving back and forth though, with the fuel costs where they are?
Yeah.
That's what concerns me. When you said that, I'm like, who in their right mind is going to get behind the wheel of a car and drive all the way in?
And my
Lose money.
commercial manager drove every day, 4 days a week from Ocala
Right
to
now,
work here for 6 years, so.
we got $5 a gallon fuel.
And that was perhaps one of his, considerations when he had an opportunity to go down there.
He left.
Yeah, so he left.
Okay.
I personally don't have a problem with what you proposed. Just think we just have to make it fit our budget. Doesn't sound like you're asking for enough going forward. I don't know what you do to budget for next year and trying to get staff, keep staff, and because you're the one that brings the money in. You're the breadwinner for the county.
Well, you know, we're up 9.54%, and
Inflation's 8.5.
I thought that was, I thought that was you know, more than what we were up last year, obviously. And I ran across this article, and it was front page, looked like front page news from Miami-Dade County, and they were saying that they are going up 10.2, you know, Miami-Dade. And, you know, a lot of these counties have a lot of new construction. And so you're able to capture a lot of funds that way. Comparatively, you know, we don't have all that much new construction as it compares to some of the counties surrounding us. So that's always a challenge. And we do have some things, you know, on the horizon. We've got the medical marijuana places that are going to be coming on next year out there at the barge port, and PRC building out there. So those are going to, you know, be helpful to our tax base.
What you're describing in Putnam County is we're like the drunken sailor. People came in here and bought a bunch of houses cheap, and then you get these guys coming in from out of county going, $250,000, that's not a problem. They throw the money down, or $400,000 on the house that sold for $100,000 that I'm aware of right now. Those days are slowing down and coming to a halt. The National Home Builders Association, you've got a 5% month over month for 2 months in housing starts slowing down. So we're starting to see that slump. Lumber index is $600 a thousand the other day. We're starting to develop a surplus in lumber. So what we're experiencing this year, the new revenue we bring in, we're going to have to spend just to keep pace with the current economy. And then if it slows down, next year is going to look like a disaster. And the year after that, even worse.
Yeah. So y'all have to be careful, you know, when you do see increases in your revenue, you know, what do we do with that? You know, is it going to be recurring? What's going to happen with the housing market? You know, are we going to see a slump like some people have predicted? And yeah, so it's a tough job. But Julianne, her job, what she has to do, and trying to come up with some kind of formula, you know, to base what y'all are going to, you know, look at as far as budget-wise goes. Tough job. So we appreciate everything y'all do in that regard. Any other questions?
Okay, all right, can we move on? Okay, Commissioner Turner?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, I'd like to start by saying again that this board voted to do a $13 hour minimum wage for Putnam County with a 5.38% increase. We voted for that. We've got to fund that. We voted for that. Unless we're changing our mind, we have to fund that. So the only way we're going to fund that is we stick to our guns here on this percentage formula. I know that some of the commissioners don't like it, but we're going to have to do it. One of the things that I'd like to bring up is the positions that you're short right now, you didn't delete those positions. You just haven't been able to fill those positions, correct?
Correct.
Well, adding 3 additional positions to the 4 that you can't fill, does that make sense when it's going to run you over what your allotted amount would be on your percentage basis by 102,000, adding 3%? Because basically that's where the numbers are. If I understand that your normal percentage would have been an increase of 182,407, and there may be some cents involved, but and that you've asked for 284,930, which is 102,523 more dollars than what your percentage would have been this year, but you're asking to add 3 additional positions to the 4 that you're already short. So with that being said, I guess I have to ask this, and it's not pleasant on my part. I want you to understand it's not pleasant on my part at all. Are you planning on going around us this year and going to the DOR and asking them for a higher budget than what we agreed to like we did last year? I mean, basically, we thought that the property appraiser was gonna ask for a certain amount of money, and then I think it was in August, you went up to the DOR and filed for an amended budget, and they gave you additional monies that we had to fund out of reserves and general fund because we had no way to see that coming. And so I guess my question is, Tim, and I'm not trying to pick a fight, I swear to you I'm not, are you gonna try to get your budget into the amount of 182,407 increase, or are you gonna continue going to the Department of Revenue to try to get the higher increase to try with the 3 new positions from the Department of Revenue? I just kind of need to know that, because if the county decides to, if I'm understanding correctly, if the county decides to weigh in on your budget at the DOR, we have until June 1st to do it.
June 30th.
June 30th to do it. And so that's why I'm having to ask you here right now, are you gonna commit that you're gonna try to get within the 182,407 increase and maybe have 2 employees instead of 3 or whatever the case may be? Or are you gonna go to DOR and ask them for the increase that you presented today? And if you are, then the only option we have is to, if the board decides to, would be to send an email to the state saying that if we take revenues away from the essential services that we need within the board of county commissioners, and we take those essential services and give them to your 3 new people, then it's gonna keep somebody from having something on the other side. So I guess I don't wanna put you on the spot, but I need to know, are you planning on presenting the budget you presented us today to DOR with no changes?
So the instance that you were talking about was actually 2 fiscal years ago, where the board did not have, or we did not put in our budget the 3% that ultimately the board or the state decided to actually make the increase. So when whether it was either the board or the state decided to make that 3% increase, we put that 3% increase in. So that was an addition that was not originally budgeted for. So that was 2 fiscal years ago. So last fiscal year, there was no changes. We just submitted our budget to the state. There was no changes from what we initially submitted.
But it was for higher than what the percentage ended up being, and I kind of understand that being the first year of the percentages thing and what have you. But if we don't, this budget process should not be this difficult. It just shouldn't. And the percentage thing that we've laid out is what it's all about. If the revenues grow, the constitutionals get to grow at the same pace that the revenue grows, and that the Board of County Commissioners employees on this side also get to participate in some of the money. Because I believe 2 years ago, the Board of County Commissioners got to keep very little, if any, of the tax increase, of the additional revenue, because it all went to the constitutionals. So I think that it's only fair that all the employees in the county get the $13 minimum and get the 5.38%. The people at Public Works, the people at the emergency personnel, everybody. I think everybody should get that. And so, but we can't do it if we take the money outside of the formula, and then we can't fund the part that we've already voted on, which was the 13 minimum. So that's why I'm asking you, Tim, are you planning on going to the Department of Revenue with the budget you turned in to us today?
Sure, of course. So the formula, and it's a pretty tough formula that you've come up with, but it's not a very I don't know if fair is the word, but at the end of the day, the amount that we gave you in June 1 was significantly different than the amount that we gave you when we certified our tax roll in September, October, which allowed you to decrease your millage rate, because there was over a 1% variance, which we don't like to do, but when we had Florida Power and Light come in with their returns and they were claiming a certain percentage discount for tax credits, then when we gave you the initial numbers, we weren't sure exactly how we were going to be treating that. And so when we gave you those initial numbers, it was a lower number than what we decided that we were not going to allow them to utilize that formula in the valuation of their tangible personal property. So it increased the amount of taxes that or the amount of revenue that the county was going to get. So instead of you going back to the constitutionals and saying, hey, we got more money than what you initially gave us or projected that you were going to give us in June, and that number will change between now and July 1st.
And
Okay.
instead, we gave it back to the citizens that paid for it.
Yeah, you gave them back, I think, $1.32
A millage
versus giving it to the employees of Putnam County. Okay? And you're not
Well,
taking
you
it,
and I
and you're
disagree,
not
Tim.
taking
I
into
think-
account the increase of all revenue sources.
That's where
This
you and I
year's
disagree. I think we should
14.72%
take any-
increase in sales tax. Last year was over 29% increase in
Well,
sales
that's
tax.
where we disagree, because I believe that we should give any extra money that's found in the budget back to the citizens as a tax decrease instead of increasing taxes every time we can. So that's the difference in what
I get
your
it.
and I philosophy is here. Tim, we've been over this before, and I didn't want it to go here today, but I'm fine. But I just needed to know straight up, are you gonna submit this budget that doesn't clearly fit within the amount of money that you're supposed to be allocated this year? And asking for 3 additional people, because I understand you need more help, I get it, but you're 4 people short. So asking for 3 additional people to put in your budget doesn't help you with the 4 you are short, or can you get the other 3 either? I mean, that's what I don't understand here, I truly don't, is that we're asking for 3 new positions because you're shorthanded, but you're shorthanded because you're 4 people short on what you have now. So if we fund 3 more positions, then you're gonna be 7 positions short.
Well, hopefully not. So part of the problem, I think, is when people come into Putnam County and they start looking at the job description, they start looking at the duties, they start looking at the pay that we're able to, pay these people. And they find out that, either that's too hard or I don't want to work that hard. So part of our goal in those 3 positions that we're asking for is to kind of realign our office and the responsibilities and the duties of those positions that currently have more responsibility than what they should have.
But you couldn't align them with 2 additional people and get the other 4 and then perhaps stay within the budgeted amount that you're due this year?
So I don't know how the formula, I could probably figure out how the formula works and understand what your goal is, and it's commendable, but it's not taking into account at the end of the day the ad valorem increase, okay? Because at the end of the day, you don't know what the ad valorem increase is going to be until September, October, okay? So it's not really, it's not fair the way it's being done currently, all right? It's not accurate, and we're not taking into account all revenue sources that are coming into the county. We're just focusing on ad valorem, okay? Sales tax is not being looked at, and I don't pretend to be or even want to do your budget process. And I understand exactly what you're talking about. Tim, why you're asking for an increase? Look, Charles, he didn't even ask for as much as you're going to give him, because of the formula. And I don't know about the clerk, I don't know about the sheriff, okay? All I know is when we submit a budget to the state, they look at it, okay? They're an independent agency. And if they come back to me and say, Tim, we looked at 66 other budgets across the state, and we don't think that you need that position, okay? Then we'll figure out a way to do it, okay? Is it going to be as good a job as what we probably could do? No, okay? You're talking about employee burnout, We've got people doing 2, 3 jobs that is really, in other counties, 1 person does. So we're trying to get a sustainable and retain our workforce as much as we are trying to make it, feasible for our employees to just earn a wage. And the board has been really good about, in the past, funding some increases for the employees, and we followed suit with that. The only time we can give a raise is when you give a raise or the state gives a raise. Well, I just can't arbitrarily just go out there and say, hey, I want to increase so-and-so's salary 10%. Can't do it. I got to go to the state, and they have to look at it, and they have to say, yeah, give me their duties and responsibilities. And if they give those to me, and they look at them and they say, yeah, that person or that position could probably be increased, but you've got to have a study in order to do that. They just don't arbitrarily say, oh yeah, give Joe, another 10%. So, what we look at in your formula, that we try to do, we want to do our job, okay? And Department of Revenue is looking at our budget, and they have the expertise to look at it, and they're an independent agency. I don't have any more sway over them than you do. And if you have concerns, yeah, obviously you can go to the governor and the cabinet and express those concerns.
I'm not willing to take it to that level, Tim. I'm really not.
I understand, and we want to
Contact DOR and that without going to all the controversy and trying to do that. We can.
Yeah, and we're already in the top 10% of a budget per parcel basis in the state of Florida. And I've always been kind of proud of that, but I think it's come back to bite me. When we have a certain job to do and our budget per parcel is so low, at some point, and it's now, okay, that has come back and we're struggling, just to be honest with you. So I've got to figure out a way to take care of my employees, retain them and pay them and get the job done that you need for me to do. And it's not easy. It's not easy on your end. It's not easy on my end. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
we think this is what we need to do our job, and just appreciate y'all understanding that.
Okay. Commissioner Adams-Act?
In a way, I share Commissioner Turner's concern as far as having the 3 new positions because you can't fill the other 4. But my hope is that you're able to fill all 7 because I really think you have that need, and that is what brings in the money for the county. And if you miss some properties that increase in value and things like that, that does cost us in the end. So I'm hoping that the returns from having those positions and having more people out in the field and having more people doing those jobs actually is a win for the county in the next fiscal year if you can fill them. My concern is more around the filling of 7 positions when you can't fill 4. But in the end, I think that comes back to us if you can't anyhow. So that's correct, right? So if they sit there and they don't fill those positions,
Only
that
if
budget
it's-
amount, if he doesn't use it, comes back to us.
Only if it's unspent funds. He has the ability to spend it at will through the fiscal year. We don't have any control over how the funds get moved around.
So yeah, we returned $242,000 to you last year.
So that's not one of my
And-
concerns. I just hope that you find a way to fill the positions, and maybe along the lines of what Commissioner Rawls was saying, is in lieu of the housing thing, maybe extend that time to move into the county to a longer period. I think that you see less turnover in your jobs because most of the people live in the county. So I think that's actually works for you. And I think it would work for us in some way if we could find the people to do the jobs, just like you're having the same problem now. So I support it. I don't like the idea of how we do the budget. I mean, I voted against it, but that's what the commission decided, so we have to go with it. But this is exactly why, because we had one constitution come in under, and we had one constitution that's over. In the end, if we listen to all the constitutionals together, it may work out that it's in a number that's acceptable. We don't know yet, because until we go through all of them. So that's where I'm at on it. Thank you.
Commissioner Rawls?
I too voted against this method. I thought it was a horrible idea. I don't think this is budgeting. I think it's just throwing a dart at the board. I think the hens are coming to roost. I think we're going to get blindsided by the approach that we're taking, but we do have an opportunity to get ahead of this, and that's why I was asking you it sounds like you're being proactive and trying to get yourself in a position to be able to attract the talent that you need for us to be able to move forward as a community. What I was alluding to earlier about the incentive is in the private sector, I know we're in the public, but there are some companies that offer housing incentives to where if somebody signs a contract and agrees to stick around for 5 or 7 years or whatever, they get a large down payment assistance. We could do the same thing with SHIP money, but I don't think there's enough SHIP money anyways to be able to move the needle, especially with the cost of housing right now. I would encourage you to talk to the state and see if there's not, the White House came out with, they're coming out with ideas right now on how to try to handle the housing crisis. This housing crisis is not unique to Putnam County. I think what makes us a little bit unique is that we have the stress coming from Clay County to the south. We have St. Johns County. They have that large Wilkinson tract that was sold. They're looking to do a large-scale PUD there with 2,500 homes. That puts more and more pressure on us as we continue to go forward. I think that the answers are within Putnam County. It's just in how we derive our revenue. That's up to the board to decide. Again, I don't have a problem with the budget you presented. I agree with you. I don't think we should have lowered the tax rate over the past 2 years. It didn't mean anything to the homeowners, but what it did do was we reduced their taxes and we reduced the services. There was no gain there. There wasn't it was a way for us to pat ourselves on the back. But, we tell people that we're balancing the budget without spending reserve money. But we're spending reserve money starting October the 2nd. Call it what you want. It's smoke and mirrors. We've got to get this thing figured out sooner than later because eventually somebody's going to walk in the door and ask for a service and you're going to have to tell them you can't provide it. And that's not going to be palatable to the consumers, which is the people that we work for. So I'm good.
Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not even gonna answer most of what that was just said because it just has nothing to do with what we're here for today. It's just campaigning, so I'm gonna skip that. So I just want to remind everybody that we voted, and I still agree, and I believe it was 4-1, if not unanimous, that we gave a 13 minimum and a 5.38%. So we got to stick to our guns and make sure we can fund that and that we're not shorting all the county employees other than the constitutionals in what we agreed to do. We've got to make sure that we do that. And we can say that, oh, we're going to raise more money later and we're going to do this. We've got to do this out of the pot we have this year. So, Tim, one last question, if I may, sir. Do you have any idea, or is it too early in the game for you to give any kind of a ballpark projection on what you think you may have left over this year? I mean, if you've got a 4-employee attrition at the moment and you got some things, there should be some money left over in this year's budget. Do you have any idea if it would be, say, maybe 102,503 more?
Absolutely.
That you're going to be giving back?
Yeah.
For this year, because if you are, then that sure changes the way I'm looking at things at the moment. Is that if you're going to basically fund the difference in between with the money you're going to give back, then maybe we could put in for the budget that with the money that we've got, if we could make some kind of an agreement with you that when you turn the money back in, we give you 102,523 to make you whole, or something along those lines. And then we've been able to stay with our percentages, and we've got you what you need, as well as trying to meet our goal.
Yeah, our excess fees will be over that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and and we try to work with the county. Jeff was saying earlier when talking with Charles, the AC breaks, we fix it. Well, the AC broke, we fixed it. Okay, we took it out of our budget. I mean, it's your money, right? But we took it out of our budget and fixed our AC. Right. So we try to work with y'all as every way we can.
I hope you understand that anything that's been said or to me or whatever today, I'm just a lot blunter than what I'm not as smooth as what you are, and so I hope that you didn't take anything that I've said here personally, because it wasn't aimed at you personally. I promise you it wasn't. I'm just trying to figure out a way to make all this fit in such a way to where you can pretty much get what you need and we get pretty much what we need to do to make this process easier year to year to year. And if everybody gets used to it, I truly believe it'll just be a deal where a constitutional comes in and says, okay, we get certain percentage this year, this is what it's projected to be. We're gonna ask for this year, or I can't do it for that this year. We've got this reason we can't do it. The state said we had to do this, which is an additional mandate we have to do. You know, that's something like that. But then it's like, this is where we start out in the conversation, is from this base percentage, and then we go from there on what's necessary to make government work. So anyhow, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioner Harvey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it very brief. Mr. Parker, you remember the days 8 years ago? You'd walk into the office and what did Mr. Leary say to you? No increase at all, right? And you would say, there's no increase on property values either. I remember those days, and they were sickening to me. So we're seeing Putnam County come out of that. Yeah, we have to start with a number, but a percentage or a number, it's the same thing. It's the same. We have an anomaly here and there. Your services did not get cut to the citizens of Putnam County because you just recently said you had 100% satisfaction or rating based on the services you provide. So us reducing the millage to give people money back in their pocket, I applaud that, and I'll do that every day of the week. And your department is still running at 100% efficiency. So, Mr. Parker, thank you for coming today. I appreciate your understanding, and I hope you can fill at least 4 of the positions that you've been holding on to. And if something changes, well, let us know, okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and thank you, Tim, for everything and what your staff does. I sound like a broken record because I think I say this every year. This is my 6th year, 6th budget, and they have all been challenging, and they've all had different things that we've had to deal with. This one's different than any of the other ones, but at least we have some increases. You know, we have the same problem that all the constitutionals have, is trying to retain quality employees. And we're from somebody with a shovel in their hand to an engineering degree, and then accounting degrees, different things in planning and zoning for their specialties. We have equipment to buy, to replace, and then. So one thing about it is, gentlemen, I appreciate this discussion that we had today, and we'll have 2 budget hearings tomorrow. We're all in this together. We're in this together, and we appreciate what everybody does. So is there anything else that needs to come before us? Julianne, do you have anything?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we're at 10 o'clock tomorrow instead of 9, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, Tim, thank you so much. We stand adjourned.